What's good guys, B-Sticks here. Go follow me on Instagram, cop some of my free mini kits. The link is down below in the description. And today we are looking at the chords of an absolute legend, Frank Ocean. Frank Ocean is an absolutely incredible artist, and we are going to be looking at the chords of Thinking About You today, which luckily for us is in the key of C major or A minor. They share the same notes. So we're going to go to the piano, we're going to look at all the chords. There's three distinct sections here. We're looking at the verse, the pre-chorus and the chorus. And I am also then going to jump into my DAW and show you how we can use these chords and apply them to our own samples. So let's jump over to the piano and get into it. So Thinking About You is in the key of C major. Quickly, just going over how we're going to think about our chords. So C to C is our octave. So C is 1, D is 2, E is 3, F is 4, G is 5, A is 6, B is 7, and C is 1 again. So this song starts on the 4 chord, which is an F major chord. So if we take an F, build an F triad, F major triad, it's an F major 7th, so we add one more note. That is our first chord. So we've got F, A, C, and E. F major 7th is our first chord. Our second chord is a D minor chord. So it's a D minor 9 chord, so all we do is add the 7th on top of our triad, D minor triad, and then we add the E on top, so our first two chords. Okay, and what you notice about that is, to make our D minor 9 chord from our F major 7th chord, all we're doing is we're adding the D. So if we add the bass note in as well, and then we go, lovely chord, that D minor 9 chord there. Our next chord, we jump up to the E minor 7th chord. So that's as easy as going from there to there. So with an E root. And the cool thing about these nice chords is all we're doing, because we're in the key of C major, is we're just skipping notes, and we can build these really beautiful chords. The fourth chord in the verse is an A minor 7th. Now what do we know? Same formula, go to the A, and we go in there, right? Although I believe the voicing that they use for the A minor 7th is slightly different. We could take our C, put it up there, and that sounds a lot nicer than just that. So what we're doing there is we're creating an inversion. We go back to the F major 7th, then to the E minor 7th, then we actually jump to a chord that is actually outside of the scale, which is a D sharp or an E flat major 7th chord, which is there. And what we're actually doing there is we are using modal interchange. We're borrowing a chord in C minor, the third chord in the scale of C minor, which is a D sharp major 7 chord, and then we're coming down from that chord straight down back to our D minor 7 chord. So if we play all the verse chords, we've got and then back to So let's look at the pre-chorus. It doesn't change much from the verse. We've got the F major 7 to the D minor 9 to the E minor 7, and then we're going to this A7 chord, which leads us back to the F major 7 to our descending progression to the. So that's a very nice progression. Now you may be asking, where does that A come from? Well, there is an A minor, but not an A major in the C major scale. You can see this A7 chord. I'm just moving that G down there. And then a 5 chord leading us to the F major 7. So really the A chord is the 5 of D, but our D minor 9 is so close to our F major 7 that we can use it as well. So there are some extensions in a C altered dominant chord that will match up with an A7 chord. We don't need to get into that right now. That's a little bit advanced, but all we need to know is that the A7 want to pull that we can go to the F major 7 after it and it still works. A cool way to think about the chorus now is moving bass notes from a D to a C to a G to an A. And that's a really cool movement because we get... And if we make this shape with the G, and we move that shape up, see, you can take any notes you want out or in, whatever sounds good to you. I'm just giving you a guideline here so that you know the movement that they're using, and then you can apply this kind of knowledge of chord movement knowledge to your own sample. Let's jump into the DAW and let's crack on with our own sample. Guys, we're in Logic now, and what I've done is I've divided our sample into two sections. Bar 1 to 4, I've borrowed chords from the chorus that we just looked at, and from bars 5 to 9, I've taken the descending line that was in the pre-chorus. So let's look at the first 4 bars. I took a patch from the Sky Keys, and all I've done here is I've added a phaser onto it, and this is how it sounds. I've just taken those chords, voiced them in this specific way, and added a little melody here. Da la 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 la. Just a nice little top line melody. I then put a bass underneath that. Couple of passing notes here, but I'm just anticipating the note that I'm trying to reach. I always sing my bass lines, as I said before. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. I'm trying to make every single element quite catchy, quite hooky. So I doubled up the chords on this high synth, and for this high synth I went for the Sky Keys again on the Flute Dusty preset on its own. Exactly the same MIDI. I put some verb on this, I put shaper box on here, and on the shaper box I'm just put a filter on, and I'm ramping that up in quarter notes here, so that comes in and out. A flanger instead of a phaser, which is kind of similar, and then some RC20 where I'm just wobbling it a little bit, giving it a bit of lo-fi texture. So then we're on to the textures, and I just added a little clap sound, but it's kind of an interesting clap sound. It's got like 2 parts to it. It just sounds like this. Process that with my usual Arturia Spring and a little bit of EQ, just taking some bottom out. Then I took a couple of Louis textures, which are really nice, and I sound shifted them in to be in key with my sample, and they, together with everything else and the percussion, sounded like this. I added some tape hiss here, which helps to again add a little bit of texture and vintage vibe to the sample. And then I sung into my phone just a melody, and I put quite a lot of effects on it, and on its own, without any processing, it sounded like this. So pretty rubbish, but the EQ, I sound shifted that and pitched that right up. I wanted to make this almost like a lead synth, but with me singing it. I added phaser, shaper box, and on this shaper box I just put some panning and some filtering. The volume automation I turned off. Auto tune obviously, and Valhalla Vintage Verb. I'll play it with effects for you. So actually it sounds like a really interesting sound that dances from left to right in your headphones, and with everything else sounds like this. So I'm showing you that with just a few elements you can create something really beautiful. Then for bars 5 to 9 I changed up the vibe a little bit. I went for the descending chords, so obviously the bass line is just going from the F to the E to the D sharp. Now if you remember, the D sharp or E flat is actually a borrowed chord from the parallel minor from C minor, so that is the 3 chord in the C minor scale, is the D major 7th chord, and then down to the D. But also this is called a chromatic walk down, which means I'm just moving bass notes by a semitone each time, and it gives us a really nice effect. So again, if I just solo the first pad, and I'm actually keeping the top note the same on this 3rd chord, which gives us some continuity with the chord before it. With the bass line and the high synth, And that little ba ba is like a little passing phrase at the end of bar 8, just to bring us back round to the first chords again in the sample. One other thing I want to show you, everything else is the same, was obviously on this chord at bar 7, the D flat major 7th chord, I had to move the vocals that I did down to another channel with a different auto tune, because we're not in C major, we're in C minor. So if I left this on C major, it would have corrected to the wrong notes and sounded terrible. So I had to move that to C minor, and it sounds like this with the vocal in. And now what I did was I just repeated these 8 bars on the next 8 bars of the sample, but I just put a bit of variation in by adding 1 or 2 extra notes. That was all very subtle things, very subtle differences, but again, it just keeps the sample interesting, so it doesn't sound like a loop the whole time. It sounds like there's some building, and you know, it's developing into something, some dynamics here. So I added these 2 notes. This note I added as well, and I added a little variation in the walk down at the end of that phrase, changed a few notes on the bass, and then the other thing I did was I sung, the notes I was singing were different because I did a whole take of the whole sample, so I sung different melodies there, which also makes things interesting and keeps things from being stale and boring, just sounding like a loop. As I've said before, I never like to do that. And that is pretty much it. So if I just play you these last couple of bars of the sample. So all I did then, just so it wouldn't sound exactly like Thinking About You, was I added my sound shifter on my master and I dropped the whole sample by 3 semitones, and it sounded like this. Hope you enjoyed that. I hope you got something out of it. So we looked at the chords of Frank Ocean there using the song Thinking About You. Go follow me on Instagram and cop my free mini kit, and let me know what you've done with this information. Cheers guys.